We're going to go ahead and get started. So yes, welcome to our Ready, Set, Smart webinar series. My name is Beth Galanti, and I'm a PD specialist from Detroit, Michigan. I saw we had some people joining us from Detroit. We're so glad to have you today. Our webinar this week is how to create asynchronous lessons using Smart Learning Suite online. And it features one of our PD specialists, Teddy Cambro from North Carolina. I'm going to turn things over to Teddy for our webinar today about asynchronous lessons with Smart Learning Suite.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. Welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoy this webinar. I'll be showing you how to create asynchronous lessons or self-paced lessons so that students can do them either remotely or for enrichment or just supplementary. You're just going to give them links to lessons that they can do completely independently. Today, we're going to be talking about creating asynchronous lessons. So I'm going to walk you through that process right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just end the presentation I'm in right now to land back in my Smart Learning Suite. And this is my Smart Learning Suite homepage. So it's like my lesson library. All the lessons I've created recently, you can kind of see as tiles. To access Smart Learning Suite, you would most likely go to suite.smarttech.com. And you sign in with either Google or Microsoft, depending on what type of, what your district uses, right? So it's kind of an either or thing. I'm already signed in. If you want, you can actually build along with me if you're in your own Smart Learning Suite, or you can just watch. Either way is totally fine. So to create a lesson, first, we go over here to this big green button that says Add Activities. So I'm going to go ahead and click that big green button. And here I get my Add Content dashboard. So these are all of the different things that I can do in any lesson, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. So since I'm doing an asynchronous lesson, I get the choice to first figure out, am I going to import a resource that I already have? Or am I just going to start with any of these other activities? And whatever choice you choose is fine. But for the purposes of today, I'll be going through importing something I already have. So as you can see, you can import Smart Notebook, PowerPoint, PDF, and Google Suite files. So Google Docs, Google Slideshows are all fair game. I'm going to click on Import Resource, and I can import either from my Google Drive because I happen to be signed in with my Google account, or from my device. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Google Drive because I have a great PDF in there that I want to use. And it is a poem by Robert Frost. And let me just make sure, here it is, The Road Not Taken. It's just a PDF that I've downloaded. And it's actually a single page. So I'm going to convert the single page into an interactive self-paced lesson assignment for my students. So here it is. This is a popular poem that we've probably all read before. It's called The Road Not Taken. And as you can see, it kind of gives you where I got it from as well to give them credit. So right now I am in editing mode, and from here I can do anything I want with my lesson. I'm going to show you a couple of different things that you can do for asynchronous lessons. So before I have my students read this poem, I would like to add something that activates any prior knowledge they may have. So if I click this plus sign in the bottom left corner, I'll be able to add other elements just like I had before. One of the things I really like is within the activating prior knowledge bubble, and as well as in the questioning and reflection bubble or square here, there are actually some ready-made resources. And so if I go into activating prior knowledge, I have a couple that I can use in synchronous lessons. But the one I'm going to pull here is one of the ready-made handout activities that my students can interact with. So this first one is an entrance ticket. You can even preview them as you go along just to see if this is the type of activity you want. And this is actually what I'm going to use. So I'll go ahead and select this activity. As you can see, a new slide was added right here. And I can actually go in and edit this to make it more of kind of a personalized or differentiated assignment for this particular lesson. And with this Robert Frost poem, if you don't remember reading The Road Not Taken, basically it's a great way to teach theme or main message of poetry. So what I'm going to do is pick up this little A here so I can customize this entrance ticket, this beginning of the lesson. And I'm going to put in the prompt. So this week we are learning about the main message or theme of poems. I'm going to have my students research online and use the space below to explain how you might find a poem's theme. So I want them to find that information, to kind of construct that knowledge on their own. And you'll notice too that I have some additional options as far as the text goes. For example, if I wanted to use a different font, make the font a different size, make it bold, maybe different color, and even kind of make it a little bit more centered. So that's what I'm going to give my students as their first assignment. And what I like to do too is, as you see me doing here, is if you click on the addition, I really like to lock them down, especially if I'm about to make it interactive for my students, because if I don't lock it, they'll be able to move it around and delete it. And I wouldn't want anyone to lose the directions, basically. So lock it down. Great. So this entrance ticket has one more thing I need to do, and that is convert it at the bottom here from view only for my students to an actual activity with convert to activity that they can do on their own. And the one I'm going to pick is the first one here, make this page an individual handout activity. Okay, so I just clicked that, and I'm going to make a couple more handouts in a second. Now, I told you this was my entrance ticket, right? It says entrance ticket right here. So I probably want to take this slide and just drag it up to actually be the first slide, because that's the first thing I want them to do. So they find out how they're going to actually identify the main message or theme of a poem. And then I'm going to have them use that information to identify the main message or theme from this poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And I also am able to actually add a prompt onto this PDF page that I imported. So up here, again, I have those little icons that I can use to modify my page. So I'm going to click the letter A, click into where I want the text to go, and give my students a prompt. And that's going to be, what is the main theme of this poem? And then I'm also going to ask them, what evidence leads you to this conclusion? Because I want them to identify how they got to this theme. I don't want them to just locate something online and then kind of give me that information from there. So maybe 14 would be better. And again, I can change the font so they kind of like stands out a little bit more. And so here is my prompt to them. Again, I will lock this down so that they can actually have this there without accidentally deleting it. And then finally, just like I did for their entrance ticket, I'm going to go down here and convert this from view only to an activity. And when I convert anything to an activity such as an individual handout, they'll actually be able to annotate over it, because once this becomes an activity like a handout, students will have some options with which to play with on the side. And I'll give you the actual student share link when I'm done building this so that you can see what it looks like for yourself. So we have our entrance ticket. where they research how to find the main message or theme. Then I have them find that main message or theme using this PDF of a poem. Next, I might want them to, let's say I want them to compare this poem's main message or theme with that of another poem that we read earlier. So I'm going to go down again to the plus sign, and this time I'm going to go into the graphic organizers. There are 21 different graphic organizers, so I have lots of different choices for lots of different content areas. I'm going to go in here, and since I'm doing a compare contrast of two poems, of two entities, essentially, I'm going to go down and find the Venn diagram. And I love this one because it has so many uses. So as you can see in this case, they're giving you like an animal example, birds versus bats. I'm going to use this activity to compare two different poems. So the one we're reading now, which is The Road Not Taken, or The Road Not Taken, versus another one we read, which let's say is Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. So I'll select this activity, and again, it's going to give me another page. Here, I'm again going to insert some text because I want them to know which is which. So on the first one, we're going to do The Road Not Taken. So that'll be right here. And on the second one, the poem is going to be Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. We're going to pretend like we read this one, that you guys read this with me in a previous class. Again, just let's go ahead and lock this down just in case someone erases it accidentally for themselves. Now, the other really cool thing I haven't talked about yet is that I can also add pictures and web links. So for this particular comparison handout I'm making, I have this Venn diagram. They already have access to The Road Not Taken because it's the previous page and they can go back to it. But they may want a reminder of what Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is. Like they might need the text of that poem for reference. So what I'm going to do is go up here to the plus sign, or the plus sign and Polaroid picture. And on the left here, you'll see I have a few choices. So here is where I can upload images from my device. I can add web links, which is what I'm going to do, or I can search for online images. And here is where I'm going to actually paste a link that I want them to go to. And that's going to be a link that takes them to this actual poem so that they can reread this poem that we read maybe yesterday or last week. And that way they can actually do this assignment of comparing and contrasting these two poems. And lock that down. If I wanted to add a picture as well, I can still go up to that Polaroid with a plus sign. And then with online images, I might even look for maybe an image of Robert Frost. Maybe I'll get them started because these two poems are, let's say they're written by the same author. So I'll get them started, and in the middle, I'll put a picture of Robert Frost. But I want them to do the rest of it, right? So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to make this a handout. So down here, the page is view only, and I'm going to convert it a third time now to an individual handout activity. These are super, super useful to make self-paced or asynchronous lessons interactive. There we go. So I've used a graphic organizer. So first I imported a PDF. It was just one slide, but you can import a Google slideshow, a PowerPoint, and it can be multiple slides. I then added a ready-made entrance ticket handout, which I modified. I also added a graphic organizer template, which is also ready-made, that I modified. Finally, I want to show you where to get game-based activities, because most of them students can do on their own as well. So going back down to the plus sign, this time I'm heading over to the game-based activities tile. As you can see, there are tons of game-based activity templates. So for example, if I want to preview what fill in the blank looks like, it's right here. You can definitely use this for vocabulary or making sure they read through something correctly. There are other ones such as label reveal, which are great for anything with kind of a visual aspect. And then there are lots of other ones, but the one I wanted to highlight in today's webinar is the word search. That is a brand new one. I think it just came out last week or, thereabouts. So if you haven't seen this one, I definitely encourage you to check it out. I will actually make a word search right now. So my final activity, I'm just going to call it word search. And I'm going to use the vocabulary terms or some of the vocabulary terms that my students have been learning through these poems because I want them to recognize them, and word search also is going to help them remember how to spell them too. So diverge is one. Undergrowth is another word in one of these poems. Trodden, and then I'm just going to add two more. We have harness and flake. So that's a crystal of snow. So these are all the vocab words they've learned throughout the unit. Maybe I just want them to kind of refresh. Now, interestingly, with the word search, you can actually change the size and the difficulty level. So the grid size, I might have it be kind of more difficult with 16 letters. And then the difficulty, I could make it easy, moderate, or difficult. I'm going to leave it as easy for you guys because I'm going to give you this lesson link as a student. And so I don't want to take forever for you to do the word search, but I could change it later on if I want to give this lesson to actual students. And then two, notice it says, do I want to show the word list? So if I want to show it, I make sure to toggle that on. But if I want to hide the word list because maybe I want them to actually remember what words they were that we learned, I could hide it. I'll leave it on for you guys though. Finally, I get to choose a theme. Notice there are 4 themes. We have future bots, monsters, our smart monsters are super cute, pirates, and then we have simple. I'm gonna grab the simple theme. That's just a preference, and then I'll finish. So now this entire lesson about finding the main theme or message of a poem contains first figuring out how to find the main message or theme of a poem and explaining that. You're going to use that information to then find the main message of this poem, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Then students will compare that poem to the other poem that perhaps we read yesterday or week before. And then finally, they're going to review some vocab that we learned throughout reading both of these poems. So kind of really bringing it back to something they've learned before. Another thing I can do is if at any time I want to actually narrate what they're going to do on a particular slide. So let's say like one of these handouts. I might use this little icon here in the lower left. So if I pull up this talking head icon, you will see that I can actually start recording up to 5 minutes of audio. So that's going to be really useful if you have English language learners or maybe special education students or really anybody that kind of needs to hear you say the directions rather than reading the directions for themselves. And finally, there are lots of other choices for you to add. You could add a YouTube video as well. But for the purposes of this webinar, I'm really focusing on the handouts that live in activating prior knowledge, the graphic organizers, and then the game-based activities. So let's go ahead and finish editing this lesson. And so now this lesson shows up in my lesson library. My library is organized by the most recent lesson that I created to the one I created 3 years ago. So most recent to the one I created forever ago. Now, what I'm going to do is to give you access to this lesson, whether I'm going to give you this lesson on Google Drive or Microsoft Teams or, sorry, I meant Google Classroom, or maybe I'm even going to email it to a student who is absent. I go to these three dots, these three vertical dots that live on each lesson tile because each lesson is a unique file. And then I go up to share link. So again, on the tile of the actual lesson, you click where the three dots are, and then you select share link. So I have two links that I can share. One is going to be the one for students, which is at the bottom here. It says, let students access this lesson and work at their own pace. That's what I want. So go ahead and copy that link, and then I'm going to give it to you in the chat because I want you to check out the lesson from the student's perspective. Okay, I want you to see how that looks. And I'm actually going to do the same. What I'll do, I'll have to actually open a new incognito window to do that. So while you check it out, I'm going to do the same just in case somebody's watching this recording later. You'll notice that when you open the link, you'll have to sign in. So students do have to sign in to these lessons. And I'll go ahead and just sign in with Google, I guess. Yeah, I'll use a different account. So I'm going to pretend to be a student. Students, the first time they access it, will get this little notification more about you. And basically they say, well, you know, they're a minor, they're not an adult. So I'm going to just select that. And they'll only have to do that one time. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I put the link to all panelists? I hate that it's set that way here.
Okay, I got it in there.
Thanks, Beth. I don't know why I did that. Now you should have the link and you should be able to click on it and sign in as a student. So I'm just going to give you a second to do that since we got held back a little bit. So when you open it, as you can see as a student, all you have to do each of those three handouts is click Start. I'm going to walk you through some of the options you have as a student to interact with that lesson. And what's really great is that students, for the most part, they have to sign in to view the lesson and to do it. And that's really good because then all their work is associated with them and it's trapped in this lesson. So hopefully you guys will go ahead and do some of these handouts, at least the first one, just to kind of see what it looks like. Because I'm going to show you on my end in a minute when I open it as a teacher, what it looks like. So first, this first hand thing on the top, that's really just a cursor allowing you to move different things. Second is the pen tool, and it also comes with a highlighter. So as a student, I could highlight, okay, well, I know I need to research online. So I'm going to highlight that for myself. There's also an eraser. And the really cool things are that you also have a way to upload images, add web links, or add online images. So I'm just going to search for an image of Robert Frost. And I'll put that in there just like I did earlier, just to show you what that looks like. Or I could search for the poem itself. Maybe something cool will come up there. So you can insert images. And then you might want to also type something. So if you click the letter A and then click where you want the text to go, you could type in. So as a student, I would say to find the main message of a poem, first read the poem, right? then go back, and so on and so on. So as a student, I'm just completing this particular handout. So I'll give you a little while longer to play with it. And then I'm going to actually show you what the lesson looks like if I go back in as a teacher and open that same file. So again, this is self-paced or asynchronous. It's really useful for if you want to like have your students do something for homework and kind of gain some background knowledge before coming to your class and doing an activity of active learning with their classmates. It's also really great for homework at the end of a lesson, something you want them to review or even to study for a test. But it's really great because they can actually interact with it. Now you're probably wondering, can they see what I've done? And they can. So as a student, I'm going to go ahead and just close my student tab. And to show you what happens later on, let's say I want to see what my students have done. It's been a couple of days and all of them have done all of these different handouts on their own, either at home or even in class, maybe a supplementary work. I'll go ahead and open that lesson back up. And now I can go into student progress. So the lesson that I created, I have 3 handouts. They're all different assignments, but they're all handouts. So those 3 handouts, I can see what students have done. If I click on student progress, for example, for the first handout, awesome. So I can see 34 students out of all the participants on this webinar have actually started this handout. So they're doing this handout and that's great. And I can actually click into anyone's handout. You'll notice that some students have check marks on their handout. That means that they click that little done icon at the top. So let me go into, I'll go into a couple of people's handouts where they click done. And I'll give you feedback. I'll say, you know what, great start. Please elaborate a bit on the process of finding the main theme. So I just gave this particular student some feedback. I can go in, see how Margie's doing. So she got a picture of Robert Frost. Maybe I give her like a little check mark. That's right, great. Go into Camille, see how they're doing. So Camille hasn't done anything. Maybe I give her a little question mark to show her that I can see her work and so on. So you can give students feedback that way. And I can go on and I can see the other lesson handouts as well. And that's pretty much an overview of how you might use Smart Learning Suite asynchronously. Are there any questions? Any burning questions?
Yeah, we've had a lot of questions, a lot of great ideas in the chat. We were just talking about the done button and kind of how that can be used asynchronously.
The done button? Is that what you said? Okay. Yeah, you can use the done button asynchronously or synchronously. It's really nice because if you notice, for me as a teacher, I'm opening that lesson up and then notice I can give students feedback. So I can go into anybody's handout. They don't necessarily have to click the done button for me to go into it. But if they did, I know that they're ready for me to grade that work or give them feedback. And what's really cool is if I go into Margie's handout and I say, you know what, I don't see where you explain the main message or theme, right? Margie, if you're still with us, if you could actually uncheck the done button, like unclick it, Margie's able to then go back and revise that handout. So asynchronously or synchronously, you can also give students an opportunity for revision, and you don't have to use the done button. You could just say, I'm going to check it at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. But if you do, it kind of gives you a more clear-cut image to let you know that students have done that handout.
Yeah, so when students are completing those handouts, they see that little done button in the upper right hand corner. And when they click that, the teacher is able to see that green check mark. So a couple of people asked about that green check mark. So now the teacher is able to see that about half her students are done or ready for feedback or whatever their procedure is for the green check mark. And then she can then pop in and give them feedback or grade it. Then when she is grading it, she can pop back to these bubbles to see all her students, or she can use the arrows to click through them. And then we did have a question that I thought was really interesting and really important. That can students, is there a way for them to work collaboratively? Like, can there be a group activity? So it's a little bit of a specific type scenario that you can use asynchronously. There's a way for them to work together.
There is, and I'm just gonna end this lesson and kind of go through that. So when they work together, the important thing is you have to start their collaboration synchronously, but they can go back and continue. So like if I go in and I edit the lesson that we're just doing, and I add, I'll just add a blank page just to show you what it looks like. What you would do is it's called a collaborative workspace. And I'll just delete this. And if I want this to be a collaborative workspace, you're going to go down to convert to activity. So it's the same place where I converted things to handouts. But instead of selecting handout, I have the option to select make this page a collaborative workspace activity. And once I do that, it becomes a workspace just like the handout did. So you just have two choices. And like I said, when I finish editing, what I'm gonna have to do is actually start this lesson and have you join me synchronously, which is kind of a different topic than our current webinar.
Right. So if Teddy chose a whole group, everyone on the same, they can start asynchronously. But if you want specific groups and chunks of your students on different teams, they would all have to join, like she said, and then they could go finish asynchronously or complete those other pages once they got online with her to be placed on a team. Yeah, just so many questions, Teddy.
Oh my gosh. Let me see if I can answer some of them.
Scrolling back. Oh, so more about the done button, right? So the feedback is huge, being able to give feedback to our students. Do they get any kind of notification that their teacher got into their work or saw their work and made a comment?
So they don't get a notification because this platform, Smart Learning Suite Online, doesn't provide notifications in a way. But what you can do is whatever learning management system you use to actually post this lesson link, so Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Canvas, you can just send an announcement and say, hey, everybody, please check your feedback and revise if necessary. You have until, tomorrow at 5 to revise. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Teddy. And I also put a link to the request a feature in our chat so that for all your great ideas and certainly kind of what you're looking for, our developers listen and they would love to hear that. And then you can also make these asynchronous, like Teddy just made for small groups. So if that link that she shared, she could also share that link with certain students for different assignments.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I'm just going through more questions. I know that you had lots of questions when you were going through. It was like, oh, I use this. So many great ideas with some already smart Learning Suite Online and Smart Notebook users. Yeah, so that's some great suggestions in here about how students can see your feedback on all their pages, maybe return back to the link, like you said. And yeah, a couple questions about accessing the recording to this. Yep. so the recording to this and other webinars. We have some links for you that I definitely want to get to. Oh, that's a really good question. Maybe Teddy can talk about this while I get some links ready. The most recent question is really important also about not every activity works asynchronously in Smart Learning Suite. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a very important distinction. So there's a few activities that only really work synchronously because the teacher has to literally click a start button. So one example is if I go into add activities, just to show you here. So if you look at, for example, shout it out. Shout it out is an activity where the students actually send up some little square note responses to a question you give them. And so if you do this activity, you have to start it and stop it at a particular point in time. So you teach them something, you want to do a quick check for understanding, so you give them a shout it out. They all respond all at the same time. And then that's how that activity works. They wouldn't be able to respond asynchronously because, again, you have to start that activity. So really, a good rule of thumb is if it says devices required, like right here, it says devices required under shouted out, it means it really should say something like synchronous or teacher led, because you do have to start it. So shout it out is one, response is another one. Response is a formative assessment that gives you student data in the form of an Excel spreadsheet, item by item, student by student. So that one is one more. And then there are a couple of game-based activities also that would be synchronous. So like if you've ever played Monster Quiz, that one will be synchronous. And so we'll team quiz. But it's only like 3 or 4 activities. Most everything else will work asynchronously. That was a really, really good question.
We have a lot of great questions specifically on how to get started with Smart Learning Suite. So this is perfect time to give you some resources. So the first one I'm putting into the chat right now, you want to just click on it and open it up in your browser. So you'll have it maybe and you can favorite it or bookmark it. But this first link is taking you to a kind of landing page for a lot of links that have to do with Smart and Smart Learning Suite. We have this first one for that person who just asked about getting started with Smart Learning Suite Online. We have links to our different products about what you're trying to get started with, so you can use step-by-step on your own time getting started. We also have links on there that will get you to other webinars we have and other resources we have for you to use. And I'm gonna put another one in here that is, since we have on there links to our webinars, our Smart Ready Set Smart webinars, but I'm going to also put in here the link to next week's webinar so you can keep your momentum going that you built with us today. And you'll see that it looks like number 6 on here. I know that is a lot of links, but if you favorite that page, you'll have all of them right there for us. And of course, how to reach out to us on social and share with us. And speaking of sharing, here is another link for to connect you with our Smart Ambassador community. We loved your ideas, and we'd love for you to be a part of our Smart Online community that shares great ideas with us. You don't have to be a Smart expert. You just got to be an enthusiast who's ready to share and learn with others. And that's what that group is all about. And Teddy, super great job showing us how easy it is to use Smart Learning Suite Online for asynchronous assignments. And thank you all once again for joining us today, and we'll hope to see you again at another webinar.
Thanks, everybody.